tuned in to the Keetria Show and listening to SOB, Style of Business, the podcast with your host, Keetria. We aim to highlight the ongoing trek of entrepreneurs and business owners from around the globe, featuring stories that recount their struggles, experiences, and inevitable road to success and self-fulfillment. Welcome to SOB.
This episode is supported by the wonderful creators of Gratitude Plus app, the app that helps you cultivate a daily practice of gratitude. What are you grateful for today? You can download the app now at the App Store or by visiting gratitudeplusapp.com/style of business. Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another wonderful episode of SOB, Style of Business, the podcast. This is your host, Keetria, and today I have a wonderful guest by the name of Madeleine Black, who is an international speaker. She is also a Tedx speaker, a author, and a psychotherapist who has been on her personal journey. And today she's visiting with us, talking to us about the experiences that she's had that has allowed her to be who she is and where she is today. And just talking about her own journey and mission and really being a great inspiration to help others share their story in times of those unfavorable conditions and trauma that sometimes people experience in life. So without further ado, Madeleine, please introduce yourself, give us a quick background, and we will roll from there.
Hi, Keetria. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It is lovely to be here. As you said, I am a psychotherapist, but I've actually recently stopped working as a psychotherapist to focus on speaking because I'm being asked to speak more and more. And I really share my story, not for me anymore, but to help others to find their voice and to live their life as courageously as they possibly can.
Wonderful. Sounds absolutely amazing. And I've checked out some of the great things that you have going, and especially with the advocacy work that you've been doing. And so I guess let's jump right in. Let's start off about talking about the story that inspired your memoir, which is Unbroken. And I know that you've had like a personal experience, and you've also shared that in a couple of the Tedx engagements and the speaking engagements that you've done. So I'll let you start there, and then we'll move forward.
Yes, Unbroken, my memoir, is my story of being gang raped when I was just 13 years old by two American teenagers. And it really follows my journey, I guess, of survival, healing, forgiveness, transformation, and hope.
I had a chance to go back and look at the TEDx event that you did and just kind of listening to a lot of that story. And then also, I think you were involved with the documentary project a few years back, and just kind of listening to that story. You know, sometimes you can't help but wonder how a person is able to really, really, really move forward and overcome such a traumatic experience, especially at that young of an age. And so if you care to, Madeleine, if you want to just give us a background of what happened, or if you want to just kind of, kind of give us an overview of what that whole memoir goes into as far as like your personal journey and being able to overcome and share that story with others, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I really believe that we are all so much stronger than we think we are. But I have to make it very clear, I didn't get to this place where I'm at overnight. I didn't just suddenly wake up and say, right, I'm going to speak about the most intimate, shameful secret of my life. It's been a process, and I've been working it for years. I've used many different types of therapies, many talking therapies, many alternative therapies. But it was about 5 years ago, through the powers of social media, I met a woman called Marina who runs an organization in London called the Forgiveness Project. And she'd heard of my story because I went on to choose to forgive the two young men, which is an interesting subject for a lot of people. It's quite a provocative word, forgiveness.
Yeah. And
she asked if she could share my story, and I said yes. And she said, I don't need to put my name or my photo. But I just thought 5 years ago, I'm tired of being ashamed for something that happened to me that was never my fault. I never invited it in. And I said, no, you can put my name and you can put my photo. And I just really underestimated what the impact would be. And I started to see very quickly why Marina doesn't call us storytellers, she calls us story healers, because within moments of sharing my story, I had messages from friends, from acquaintances, from people I didn't know, and then from people across the globe, from different countries, messaging me and saying, yeah, me too, I've had the same experience, and sharing my story just really gave them some hope. And so that's really why I share it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know it's, it would probably seem a little bit obvious when people ask you questions about the type of impact that this has had on your life. But, like you said, you didn't get here overnight. And so, like, just kind of having to live with that and kind of not even think about what happened to you. How were you able to come to a point to where it was okay for you to share this and let other people know what had happened with you?
Well, I never ever intended to forgive them. I kind of call myself an accidental forgiver. So I very nearly didn't become a mum, but I have 3 beautiful girls. I can say that because I'm their mum, but they are gorgeous. And my eldest daughter, Anna, turned 13, so she turned the same age that I was when I was gang raped. And I was also studying psychotherapy, and I was doing tons of personal development, and all my memories came back, all in the forms of like nightmares and flashbacks and pictures. And at first I really thought that I was going mad. I thought, if it was so bad that I would remember it. But then I realized it's because it was so bad, my mind had shut it down for years. So I went back to therapy, which was the last time about 13 years ago. And I went for about 3 years. And near to the end, my therapist suggested to me that, maybe these 2 young men weren't born rapists. And at first I was just outraged that he even dared suggest something, because I was just full of rage and revenge and hate. And I fantasized about somebody, kidnapping the 2 of them and tying them up and raping and torturing them for hours on end, just like they had done to me. But I started to see that this rage and hate and anger I was filled with, they would have no idea. It was only harming me, my husband, my kids, my friends. It was having no impact on them at all. So forgiveness for me was really about understanding. And I really believe that we're all born equal. And I believe we're all born that clean, beautiful, blank slate as babies. I had a friend who was a midwife, and she told me that she had delivered thousands of babies and she's never once met an evil one. Mm-hmm. And I do believe, just like her, we are all born the same, but somehow, we get corrupted by life, we get conditioned. And I wanted to understand, needed to understand, why could these 2 young boys who weren't much older than me, maybe 17, 18, how could they know to be so violent? And that sent me on this journey of forgiveness and understanding and actually compassion. I started to feel compassion in my heart towards them, which took me by surprise as well. But I thought, I've done a really good job of living my life, just refusing to be identified by what had happened, becoming a mum, which I thought I would never do. But they have to live with what they've done to someone else, and I don't imagine that would be easy. So forgiveness was always, I guess, for giving me a better chance. There was nothing really to do with them at all. I didn't, need them to turn up and say how sorry they were. It was always for me, and it really allowed me to accept all of the details, everything that was done to me, because actually after a while my denial was worse than the pictures themselves. Me not wanting to believe it was causing more disruption in my mind than the pictures. And so when I chose forgiveness, and it is a choice, I could accept all that was done. I realized I'm not my body, I'm not the things they did to me. All of us are so much more than our events. And I could just say, okay, I'm still alive. They didn't kill me. I'm going to let it go, because I don't want it to chain me to my past. I don't want to be held back in any way. And that's really how I ended up choosing to forgive them.
That's an amazing story. And I know you mentioned the therapy and getting help and support. Did you ever feel like you were pushed into the corner to where you just, like, when did you know that you had to get some sort of support? Like, was there anyone around you, maybe your husband or any family members that just noticed that there was, that you needed some help?
I think that therapy for me is a bit like an onion. There's many, many layers. And so years ago I would do some work, and then I'd be okay for a while, and then it would come up again, and then I'd do some more work. And this when this came back, when Anna turned 13, I couldn't ignore it. And I thought, I need to go and clean this up once and for all. I mean, I was the worst client, because I told my therapist I want him to make these pictures stop. I don't want to see them anymore. And obviously, as a therapist, we can't make pictures stop. I do believe things come back when we are ready to work them. And I slowly understood, actually, the way in was going to be the way out. I had to really face everything that was done, because we can convince ourselves we're okay, but, I really know I wasn't okay. I was putting on a mask and I was pretending and minimizing so much of what happened. But once I really faced it, that was when the healing really happened.
Exactly. Yeah. And I saw that it's been a bit of a process for you, because even since the book has come out, you've been doing different speaking engagements, and one of which was the Tedx speaking event that you did. And that really made a difference. I know a lot of people were impacted by that speech as well. You want to talk about a little bit about some of the events that you're doing?
So this is Tedx Glasgow, and it's quite a big one apparently in the UK. I didn't realise. And so there were just over 2,000 people. And up until that point, I'd spoken to about 500 people maximum. So I was a bit nervous, to say the least. But I'm very passionate about sharing my story, because you never know who is in the audience, who is going to reach out of these 2,100 people. So waiting on the side, I was terrified. But once I got out onto that red dot, I just thought to myself, this isn't about me speaking. This is about who's listening.
Yeah.
And the very next day, I had a head teacher email me and said he was there with a group of his students from his high school. And one young woman turned to the maths teacher, who was also there, and said that she was raped by a family member about 3 years ago. She'd never told anyone. She said if she hadn't heard me, she most probably would have still never told anyone. But she said listening to me gave her hope. And I've now gone to the school and I've met the young woman, and I'm going to hopefully go back to the school and speak to the whole of the 5th or the 6th years. But, that's all the evidence that I need. And I said, if I was just there to speak to you, then that's my job done. Maybe that's the only reason I was there that day on that stage and you were there in the audience. But, every time I speak, I have people contact me all the time and tell me their stories. So, I really understand that courage is, infectious, it's contagious, because it was somebody else speaking out that helped me find my voice, and I just really intend to pay that forward.
Exactly. Yeah. And speaking of making a difference, why do you feel like it's important to share these types of stories? Because now it's more of a movement. I think when people come out and speak about the different experience, like you said, it gives other people courage to share their story as well. But from your perspective.
I think the Tarana Burke spoke about 10 years ago with Me Too, but the last Me Too movement, really, it was actually 2 years ago today, so it's kind of nice that we're speaking today. So it was 2 years ago, people thought it was just a moment, but you're right, it is a movement. And I think it has really given people the courage to find their voice. For years, what kept me back was my shame. I was so ashamed of what happened to me that I thought, if people knew, they wouldn't want to know me. They would look at me differently. They would be disgusted, because I felt that way about myself for years. I just felt worthless, disgusted, dirty, contaminated. And I assumed incorrectly that other people would look at me in the same way if they found out. It's been 5 years since I've shared my story, and I've never had anybody say those things to me. So, I saw that our fears are really in our imagination, and shame is a really, really hard emotion to walk out. It was like I had a coat of shame and I wore it for years, and I never took it off until I stepped into it. So it's an odd one, because you have to really confront your shame in order to learn to be okay with your shame. But shame keeps us silent, and we're not supported by society either. Society keeps us silent. Just in your country alone, you have a president who thinks it's okay to grab a woman by the pussy. So how seriously is it being taken, sexual violence against women and men?
Exactly. No, I tell you what, you definitely have it's right there in your face. Like you said, we have representation that believes one thing, and that's supposedly leading a country. So it's one of those things to me that if you keep silent about it, it keeps just kind of stays under the rug, right? So if you are able to go out and speak about it, like you said, you encourage other people to do the same. Which brings me to this point. I want to get a little bit about your personal mission. You have the book now. You're speaking about your story. What other advocacy work do you have in regards to your personal mission?
Well, I never really intended to be an advocate, but it's just kind of happened. So as I said, I've now stopped working as a psychotherapist because I've been asked to speak more and more. So just actually last December, I said to myself, okay, if I'm meant to be a speaker, then I'd love a sign. I'd love to work internationally. And I thought, well, that's never going to happen. But I woke up on January the 1st with an invitation to Johannesburg, and then on January the 5th with an invitation to the Maldives. So I thought, okay, that's a good sign. I will take that sign. Exactly. So now I just go out and I just speak, really, and I just share my story. It's a variety of different events. I do a lot of book events still with my book, but I also, invited into schools, universities, ladies' lunches, conferences, all different kind of events and all over the world. So it's brilliant for me, but it's really about sharing my message and helping people to find their voice. And I don't expect people like me to stand on a stage, but I think to find your voice, to give it oxygen, just moves something inside. And I think when we don't speak, we really hold ourselves back. There's a part of us that isn't integrated with the rest of us. It's like a little part of us in the deep freeze. And I think when we can let that out, when we can speak about it freely, then we can be more connected to ourselves. And then the true essence of us can really come out, and you can live a great, spontaneous, fantastic life.
That is excellent, Madeleine. I'd like to get your thoughts on, say, for instance, perhaps somebody may be listening who has had one of these experiences. Oh my goodness, I'm twisting and turning all types of different ways with these words today. So look past that. But as far as anybody who may be listening who has had a assault or some sort of experience similar to yours, like what sort of advice could you offer, or just words of encouragement?
Sure. I would just say, it's never too late to find your voice, and there's always support and help out there. And find someone that you trust. It doesn't have to be a therapist, but find someone that you trust, because I think to be listened to be heard, and to be believed, there's nothing more empowering than that. And to know that if you have been a victim of sexual violence abuse, it was never, ever your fault. 100% of all rapes are caused by rapists, and that's it, nothing else. It's not what you were drinking, it's not because you were out late, it's not what you said, what you didn't say. We know that babies are raped, we know that women in burqas are raped. The perpetrator is always the guilty one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and to add to that, what about, sometimes when people are a little bit reluctant or hesitant to share their story, is because that, they don't want to be the blame or the victim. And like I know in many instances, some of the people that I know personally, they were blamed for the things that have happened to them, and I think that kind of makes it hard. And especially when, like you mentioned, you have a president who laughs and mocks different people who've had these types of experiences. So maybe they are a little bit hesitant about coming forward because they don't want to be the guilty party, right?
No, I get that. We don't make it easy for victims to report. And also in the UK, the conviction rate is so small. And especially where I live in Scotland, it's such a small conviction rate. And, I worked at Rape Crisis for many years, and we would have to really prepare women to say, if they are going to court, they've reported it, the chances are you won't get a conviction, and that's a reality. And that's shocking. That needs to change. It's not great at all, the justice system, how we treat victims of crime. And it's the only crime I can think of where there is so much blame attached to it. If your car is robbed or your house is set on fire, you don't say, oh, I shouldn't have left my car outside my house, it was my fault. My car was stolen. But it's the only crime I can think of where the victim is just almost as guilty sometimes as the perpetrator.
Yeah. That is absolutely true. Yeah, we definitely have work to do when it comes to personal space. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Madeleine, before we get ready to wrap up, let us know where we can find your book, Unbroken, and also if you have any other upcoming speaking engagements. And hey, we need to get you over here in the States. So if you have anything,
to come over to the States, I would love to. But you can find me anywhere on social media. My website is madelineblack.co.uk. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, which is madblack65. I have a Facebook page, Madeleine Black Unbroken, and I'm on LinkedIn. You can get my memoir, Unbroken, on Amazon. You can just order it or ask your local shop to order it in. And next month it will be an audiobook. So that's really exciting.
Oh, that is so great. Okay, well, perfect. Yeah, that'll give us that like to listen an option as well. So that would be good. All right, sounds good, Madeleine. Well, we thank you so much for being on the show. If you have any last words, just anything that you want to leave, go ahead and do that. And we definitely appreciate your time this afternoon.
I would just say, like I've said before, I just want to repeat, it's never too late to go and get support. There's always support of someone out there. Don't suffer in silence. Find your voice and end the silence.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Madeleine. You have a great day.
And you too. You're welcome.
Thanks for hanging out with us here on SOB. We hope this episode has been resourceful. If you'd like to check out the latest articles or follow Keetria's website updates, just log on to Keetria.com or follow her on Twitter at KEETRIA.